public transit.
Mayor Tory, Council passed the anti-poverty plan with much fanfare yesterday, but acknowledged there's going to be this budget pressure. There's still an upcoming budget issue with the massive police budget. If you do the simple math, the increase that police are asking for actually covers off the entire cost of the anti-poverty plan for next year. Yet it doesn't seem as though the police are being held to this 2% cut that you've asked from all divisions. Are you planning to push for that? Or?
Can I just make clear, because I was astonished yesterday and I continue to be astonished even this morning at the fact that there's this notion that I've asked everybody for a 2% cut. That is not true. What we asked people to do was to see if they could find 2% inefficiencies in their budget. There was no assumption that if they found those 2% inefficiencies, we would then keep all of that money in effect as savings and not invest in other things. The idea was that it would permit you to do more by way of investing, whether it's in improved transit or in improved anti-poverty measures, if you found 2% inefficiencies. And I felt that it was important to establish as a principle by itself that you would be looking for 2% efficiencies just because out of respect for the taxpayers and their money, you do that. And so people have had varying degrees of success in finding or not finding the 2%, but it was never meant to be a 2% cut. And the notion that people like Mr. Layton and others would get up yesterday and say that that's what it was is misleading to the taxpayers and misleading to the citizens and misleading to the media. The bottom line is we asked people to find 2% inefficiencies, and nowhere was it said, for example, that I wouldn't take me or anybody else, the council, that entire 2% and 2% more and add it to people's budgets. So we just didn't say. We said, please see if you can find the 2% as a standalone request that is a reasonable request to make when we're dealing with scarce public funds in a great big organization where I know from past experience running them, you can find some efficiencies, whether it's 2%, 1%, or some other number.
Will you hold the police to that?
Is it just an exercise? Then I remember
well, no. When you say is it just an exercise, it's an.
What is the incentive for the department if they have to look? Because last year, just if I recall, when you guys did the loan to cover all the shortfall, I thought the call was pretty direct that you were going to find savings within departments, not just.
But Jamie, you find the savings so that you reduce the pressure on you, including the pressure that comes from trying to improve service, whether it's transit service or anything else. And so, as you say, is it just an exercise? I would say, well, no, it's not just an exercise. It's a very important part of budget making. The problem that I find as the mayor, having come in here new to this, it's the first time I've seen this. There is almost no scrutiny of all the money that was spent the day you start. So if we're spending, say, to round the number, $10 billion, there's nobody who says, well, let's really drill down on the 10 billion and see what you can find that may not be spent very well, or maybe spent inefficiently, or maybe not needed anymore. You just focus on the part that you're adding to the budget. And I think that's fundamentally wrong, and it's why governments are in trouble today financially. And so the request to look for 2% inefficiencies was a request to get people to scrutinize the existing spending. And if it was possible, let's say in an ideal world, for everybody to have come back with 2%, think of all the money we would have that we could then say, well, we could use it to reduce taxes or whatever. I'd be more likely to look at it and say, what part of this could we take to apply to better transit service or to the anti-poverty strategy? And people have had varying degrees of success, which I will tell you, when it comes to the budgets they're submitting that I'm starting to see as part of the roll-up process, is going to allow us to improve service because we're getting the 2% or whatever they found in efficiencies, and we may have to add some more money to that. So it actually is a good news story, but this notion that it's become either a 2% cutback or just an exercise where we're putting people through it for window dressing or optics is entirely misleading.
Do you two more questions?
Oh, go.
Yeah, go. Police are being genuine and actually looking for efficiencies when they've consistently come back and said, we just can't find it.
I was on the phone with them for an hour and a half this morning, and again, I'm a member of the Police Services Board, and I'm the mayor, and I have conversations with them that are just sort of trying to make sure that the exercise we're going through of finding additional funds is genuine. And I can tell you both at the TTC and at the Police Services Board, and I'm happy about this in the context that they are the two biggest budgets are very genuinely looking for ways to save money, and they're having some success. And we'll report to you on that, obviously, in due course when those budgets are brought before both the Commission and the Police Services Board. Am I happy with the fact that we could have saved more? Well, I'm never content with these things because it's your job. If you're doing an effective job as the mayor or as a CEO or as the head of any of these organizations, to keep pushing people to try and be more efficient, because we're dealing with money people worked hard to earn and then sent it to us. So I think they expect me to be sort of relentless in trying to find savings. But I'm still at it as recently as this morning, and I will continue at it until the last day that this thing comes forward for approval, so that we then have the opportunity to make investments in other things like anti-poverty strategies and like transit and like a whole host of things that we face pressure on. As the budget process unfolds, and today is the start of a process, not the end of a process, I invite my colleagues and the public, and I'm sure my colleagues don't need any invitation, but I invite the public as well to take a close look and help us find opportunities, yes, to invest, but also to find ways to save and to do things more efficiently, including places like the TTC, for example, where while there's a need for investment, there is also, I can tell you right now, more room for improvement on things like staff growth, even taking into account new and restored services. But we won't stop there. We won't stop there. Even after we approve a balanced budget, as we're required to do, and we will do in March of this year, I will ask for and will lead in the process of finding, in 2015, an additional 2% in efficiencies in the city government, because I believe it should be done, and I believe it can be done, and I believe I know how to show leadership in getting it done. That would be another $80 million. That was not the approach of my predecessor, to be quite frank. He mandated a 10% cut across the board, regardless of what budget you were talking about and what the needs might be, and so on, and that dramatically impacted, I would argue, the city's ability to serve the people of Toronto. His idea of putting the city on a diet consisted of cutting off limbs, like transit services, and then talking about losing weight, while cumbersome, expensive government process went absolutely untouched. I will take a determined, business-like approach to eliminating waste and mismanagement and just eliminating efficiency and bringing the government into the 21st century, a lot of which is needed to be done, because frankly there haven't been the kinds of investments in things like technology to allow us to do things better and to allow us to do them faster and to allow us to do them more efficiently. And that effort, which is not required to balance this year's budget, that will be done. This will be savings that will accrue to the benefit of future years, but more importantly about the savings and the money is the fact that it will allow us to look the taxpayers in the eye and say we're doing every day something to make sure this government is run better and more effectively and more efficiently with your money. We're not stopping when the budget process is over. We're starting year after year, and when that $80 million is done, we'll start on the next tranche, because you know, as I know, every household does that every year, every month, every week, and every business and enterprise does that every year, every month, and every week, because that's what they have to do. And government should be and won't be any different. And this will involve, this exercise that's going to be an ongoing thing, a hard look at the big budgets. That's where you have to start. Again, you all know that. You've got to start by taking a look at the big budgets like the TTC and like the police. And while they're important, crucial services to the maintenance of proper transportation and mobility and safety in our city, there are always ways when you have a $1 billion budget, and again, many people in this room know this, especially when you have a $1 billion budget, there are always ways you can find to do things better. I would start, for example, with things I talked about during the election campaign, which is more sharing on things like real estate and technology. For years, some of these organizations, and I've experienced it already in the first 50 days, have said, well, they can't really share in doing things together. They have to do things their own way because they're different. And I say to myself, in 2015, being different won't cut it anymore. We will get on with greater sharing of people and resources and ideas, because I think that is what the people of Toronto expect us to do. Again, it's the right thing to do, and it's the right way to do it. The thoughtful, methodical, careful way, but you get it done nonetheless. You don't cut off the limbs in order to lose weight. You do it in a way that's careful and methodical and practical. I want to be clear as well, this is the beginning of a process where we will be scouring the city for real savings and efficiencies. In the coming weeks, as I've mentioned before, I'll be announcing the framework of a process that will help us to achieve a target of 2% savings across all city divisions and agencies. That would yield around $80 million by the end of this year, with most of those changes, of course, reflecting themselves in the 2016 budget. Including the resource allocation question and the mandates.
Just in terms of the budget next year, you're looking at 2% across the board. or you may have to go further depending on what variables come into play. But are you saying the TTC will be protected from any kind of budget intrusion from City Hall?
Nobody is protected. When you say protected, I mean, it's not as if we're trying to attack anybody, but nobody, there are no things that will not be examined.
Public transit.
Mayor Tory, council passed the anti-poverty plan with much fanfare yesterday, but acknowledged there's going to be this budget pressure. There's still an upcoming budget issue with the massive police budget. If you do the simple math, the increase that police are asking for actually covers off the entire cost of the anti-poverty plan for next year. Yet it doesn't seem as though the police are being held to this 2% cut that you've asked from all divisions. Are you planning to push for that? Or?
Can I just make clear, because I was astonished yesterday and I continue to be astonished even this morning at the fact that there's this notion that I've asked everybody for a 2% cut. That is not true. What we asked people to do was to see if they could find 2% inefficiencies in their budget. There was no assumption that if they found those 2% inefficiencies, we would then keep all of that money in effect as savings.